This is Capitalize Your Finances, the show representing you, a select group of excited, ready, and fired up listeners seeking to potentially maximize your money moves and get after it. We don't settle for generic advice of always and nevers. Our currency is our intellect, and we constantly seek the logical way of likely creating advantages to potentially maximize wealth for our personal and unique situations. The show brings you this step-by-step framework to capitalize your finances in the aspects of your financial situation, and we strive to explore strategies and ideas to potentially help you capitalize on your financial decisions. We are capitalizers, and this is our show.
Welcome back to Capitalize Your Finances. As always, I'm your host, Christopher A. Panayiotou, the Cap in Capitalize. And today we have one of my longtime best friends, the founder of the premier media group, Mr. Josh Dunn. Josh, welcome to the show.
Chris, thank you so much. Glad to be part of the event.
Absolutely. And I have been ecstatic to have you on. We've been talking about this for a while now, and we have so much to cover today. But before we dive into the weeds, give our capitalizers at home just a little bit more of a background of really who you are personally and professionally.
Well, for myself, been an entrepreneur for 22 years. I'm a self-made entrepreneur. Feeding the business baby every single year. We have no investors. At the same time, I love to serve, love to give back, serve many areas of our community and continue to serve today, whether it's Milgard School of Business with the University of Washington, various nonprofits, as well as the most important thing to me is my family and my faith. Father of three amazing kids, 2 adult kids, one still in middle school, and been proudly married to my amazing wife for over 26 years. So those are the highlights right there.
Absolutely. 26 years and going strong, I might add. And before we dive into how you and Michelle have capitalized on your finances to the fullest, I want you to take us back to the moment that got you inspired to get into media. I mean, what even put you in that mindset to dive into this field in the first place? Was there a particular moment that inspired you, a series of moments, anything in particular? Enlighten us.
Yeah, I mean, I good question. I've always loved small business entrepreneurship, and the idea around helping other businesses become successful is vital. And I felt that if I can help more fellow businessmen and women become successful, maybe I can help myself in the process. And so in doing that with the media company, that was the goal, is to provide an outlet for these enterprises and these leaders to have a platform to share their stories and share their brands.
Sure. And once you knew that your life purpose was Premier Media, because there was that time, and I know we've talked about it in the past, where you're like, hey, I'm all in, right? There's no turning back. So what was that original game plan like for you? Was it highly calculated? Was it freestyled? Was it a combo?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been somewhat calculated in my approach. I'm not one for quick hits. I tend to think before I make a decision, before I make a serious move. So yeah, I tend to be very calculated. Certainly there are things that come that aren't what you anticipated, whether it's a market share, labor, sales opportunities. But yeah, definitely I try to calculate and strategize every area of my life, both personal and business.
And as far as being mostly calculated, which I'd like to think that's what we have in common, one of the many things, talk to me a little bit about when you decide to not necessarily shoot from the hip, but it's a little bit more freestyle. Like, what are the moments in business where you kind of just, you snap your fingers and you act?
I'm shooting from the hip is not my gift by any means. I might have a strong gut. I do trust my gut, but I'm never one to just fire off the gut. I do have a lot of ideas, a lot of insights that may have come my way, but I do have an advisory board. I do have folks that I try to run things by, both personally and professionally, before I get too engaged in an idea. I mean, man, I get a lot of ideas. I want to make sure I make a wise, calculated decision on these ideas.
Sure, sure. Now, have there ever been any ideas that you went through that calculated mindset and then looking back on it, it's not necessarily you wish you kind of could do it all over, you shot yourself in the foot, but what would you say were one of the biggest calculated moves that you've made in business where you thought it was going to be X, then it's Y, and you took that negative and you've learned something tremendous from it?
Yeah, I mean, some of the strategic moves that we've made in the professional life where we really wanted to get into this custom publishing space. I had a lot of experience custom publishing, where essentially we'd work for the organization or work for the nonprofit, and we would be the custom publishing arm that we would handle the sales, the marketing, and the creation of building whatever product they have. And I like that model, and it's a revenue share model. At the same time, what happens quickly is you don't own anything. And I wanted to do that. We did do some of that. We've done custom publishing. But at the end of the day, you may have made some revenue, but you don't own anything. I just felt like going forward from a strategic opportunity, I want to own the brands, own the relationships that we launch, not just a work for hire opportunity.
Sure. So instead of the transactional ideas, you learned very quickly, okay, we need to make this a recurring revenue / ownership idea.
For sure.
Which is massive.
Yeah, I agree.
So as you got started building Premier Media Group, obviously there have been tremendous ups and tremendous downs. Okay. Now, being a positive Paul that I am, I want to start on the bright side, and then we'll start to ease into the negative Nancy's. But walk us through some of your biggest gains that you initially had starting the business and you got the ball rolling. Was it a person? Was it a process? I mean, what was it that got you compounding in the right direction in a major way?
Yeah, I mean, I would look at some of those wins and victories being hiring some incredible talent on the journey have propelled us tremendously. Some of the ideas of selling something that's a brand at the right time, at the right opportunity, have been some huge wins. At the same time, buying opportunities or buying brands that were in a trend that they weren't succeeding very well. We had an opportunity to come alongside and buy the brands and refresh them and guide them to a new plan. Those are some fun things along the way. So brand ideas as well as talent, there's been some huge acquisitions along the way that have propelled the media company to at times have a larger footprint than I originally had imagined.
Sure. And remind our listeners, so how long has Premier Media Group been in existence?
So we've been in business for 22 years. We started the week of 9/11 in 2001. And we have just under 30 on the team. And we have just an amazing leadership team as well as a creative group that guide and build and create amazing storytelling and brands with our 6 brands under management.
Sure. In kind of a rapid fire mini part of our episode, I did want to ask, so you've been around for 22 years, you got 30 people. Obviously, you didn't just wake up and 30 of them were there. So how long was it just you?
It was probably 18 to 24 months. It was just me in a little private cubicle in a little small office in the beautiful state of Washington where, it was quiet for a while. In fact, the first person that we brought into the company is still with us today and is a dear friend of the family. Love him dearly. He had left for a few years to go work in technology and then came back to work with the organization. But he's been with us a cumulative of probably 18 years, but he had left us for a little gap there. But we're so thankful to have our first employee back.
Sure. That is awesome. And so when was it that you really started revving up, bringing people on? Because I could imagine for a while it was you and this buddy of yours.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. What you in startup for our typical industry, you would bring in one, outsource a few, bring another one, outsource few. And over the years, there's never been a year where we've had mass hirings. I think we've maybe hired 5 at the most in one even given point of our year. But we're slow to hire and very intentional about who we hire when we hire. And we have more freelancers in our ecosystem than we do have staff. So it takes a leader to manage their projects as well as manage overseeing quite a few of incredible freelancers that are in our communities.
And would you say in the media industry that's common to hire slow and hire calculated? Because just from my lack of knowledge, it sounds like the exact opposite of what most of these companies do.
I mean, it depends on the media group that you're dealing with. Sometimes what happens, I guess in our situation, I've always been self-funded. So I don't have investors. I don't have a big VC supporting us. I didn't come into Windfall and then you hire out and then you build the company. Everything has been strategic, onesie, twosie, 2s by 2s, 4x4, feet to feet, belly to belly. Well, we've never had a huge windfall, and I'm grateful we don't. We don't have to answer to anybody but to my advisory board. But we're also not a huge tens of $million company, but it's also a company that we own, that we control, and we can be very strategic in how we guide and lead our organization.
Sure. So we've talked about the positives. Now we're not going to end on a negative note, but we have to talk about the real side of business, which includes some of those negative Nancy's I mentioned earlier. And so let's talk about some of the bumps in the road. Let's get a little vulnerable, Josh. Okay. I'm not asking about like numbers here. Okay. But what were some of the toughest moments like, and go through a couple of them with us with Premier Media Group. And what did you do to turn that ship around so it didn't sink?
Yeah, I mean, in business and in life, it's not always rosy. It's not always positive. Now, I am always investing to wire myself to be a very positive mindset and be inspirational in my approach. But along the journey, you're going to have those setbacks and those learning opportunities. A couple of those. I mean, we've had times where payroll, like I never got paid, but the staff got paid. And there's times where a client had accidentally overpaid us and doubled their pay. A very large international company overpaid us times 2, and payroll was coming up in the next 7 days. The temptation there was to keep the money just to cover payroll, and it was a very, very tough decision. We weren't having the cash flow that we expected, but I remember in my gut knowing that, man, if I don't take care of this client, this will reflect on myself as well as our company and not being honest. And we end up sending the check back.
Sure.
And then, by God, that somehow we had just enough to cover payroll. We've never, ever missed a payroll in 22 years. No, that was a learning curve. It was a challenge. It was a setback. The other setback is we've had a labor dispute with an employee that felt like that we wronged them. And it was quite detrimental to the mindset of our team, to the mindset of our culture. That's not who we are. There's a misunderstanding. There was a comment made that was misunderstood. Those things have tremendous impacts on your culture, on your mindset, and on your finances. I mean, it's extremely expensive to go through something like that. And the other thing is I fell off a roof and hit head first on the pavement and literally, almost didn't have a healthy brain for a long time. And you can still argue my brain's not healthy, but that's a physical setback that is very challenging to deal with, having to kind of start and refresh guiding and leading both personally and professionally.
Sure. Well, on 2 of those points, one of them regarding the mindset. So from a mindset standpoint, when you have something like that go through the business where it is detrimental. I mean, forget the finances for a second, even though this is a financial show. How did you overcome reinstilling that positive mindset in a company? I mean, it's easy with 2 people or 3, but when you have 30,
right.
that I'm intrigued on behalf of my listeners how you did that.
I mean, at the end of the day, anybody can say anything, but you do have a gut and you do have to trust the people around you, and you have to trust what you know that you know. If I, for example, Chris, I know you, I know your culture, I know your value system. If you feel like there's a discrepancy there and you work with our organization, maybe we're not the right fit. But if you feel like someone's crossed us up, then you have to realize someone's crossed us up, and we're not going to allow that to happen. And I would say in this particular situation, it actually rallied us, pulled us together, made us stronger. Because they know the culture, they know the mindset, they know the integrity of the organization as our core values, that we are a breath of fresh air. We're not here to disparage anybody. We're here to speak kindly of people. And for there to be misunderstanding, it certainly wasn't with intent to hurt or to cause harm. Perhaps a comment was made that was wrong. I agree. If the comment was made, it was wrong and should not have been said. But to attack and to try to destroy the enterprise, I have a problem with that.
Capitalizers, this episode is sponsored by the best-selling book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. Regardless of where you're at in your financial life, whether you're just beginning to express interest and commitment to your personal finances, at the pinnacle of your career, winding down into retirement, or thinking about your legacy for future generations, this book walks you through every step of the way so you can succeed on your terms and with your own values and passions guiding you. After reading this book, you will officially have Christopher A. Panayotu, the Cap in Capitalize, in your back pocket, guiding you in detail through every step of the way so that you can take charge of your finances, not the other way around. Head on over to Amazon.com today and start capitalizing your finances to the fullest with this incredible book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to financial framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. And now, back to the episode.
Sure, as you should. Well, in transitioning to the health side of things, okay, so when you fell off the roof, and I know your story a little bit, but how did you overcome that? Because that's actually had a profound impact on how you do business throughout the week.
Right.
I mean, tell our listeners about that. It's kind of inspiring.
Yeah, what happened too, kind of going into that season, I felt like I was grinding. I'd argue perhaps out of control or unhealthy at times, and this setback forced me that I had to reevaluate my entire schedule, the way I can incorporate data, the way I can incorporate communication, the way I can even think. To me, thinking is extremely valuable asset that I treasure. I can't wait to read and to ponder and to think or to listen to people speak. So I had to recraft my entire schedule and my calendar and realize that the capacity of a typical business week, I can't handle 5 days of meetings and engagement all day. And so I began to recraft my schedule and turn my Wednesday into a personal day. That Wednesday is a day where I can really minimize appointments, minimize phone calls, minimize communication, and look at how can I make myself better? How can I heal myself? And that was through a lot of walks, a lot of reading, some golf, some exercise, some quality time with one-on-one with one other person. Other than that, those days are left to kind of think and to strategize and get a clear head. And I found that our business really grew after that, ironically. It was less busy, but it was more intentional, creative thought process.
Interesting. Well, and I remember when you told me that years ago when you were speaking at a local event, and I took that to heart. And so now, I can't say that I have a full personal day on Wednesdays, but I have my admin days. My amazing teammate knows that, hey, Wednesdays are the day for paperwork, and you can work a lot more on yourself. So for that, I just wanted to say thank you for enlightening the Cap and Capitalize.
Yeah, that's cool.
Now, for you and Michelle, you've obviously built this incredible business. And once the gears were really turning for your company, and you and I have seen this with a number of our friends where when the going gets really great, they think it's just going to keep going and going, but they forget to not lose it. And so can you tell us about that moment when you knew Premier Media Group was going to make it? First off, what did that feel like?
I mean, honestly, Chris, I don't know if I've ever felt that it can make it, because any given day the market shifts, COVID comes,
Sure.
I guess I've never, maybe that's just my personality. I've never come to the office, to the desk, to the computer and said, man, I've arrived. I've made it. Now, I can reflect and go, wow, our brands are sustainable. Our team is fairly resilient. It's awesome. Yet I've never had the approach like we've arrived or we've made it and we've got something. But I do take great satisfaction knowing that our brands are sustaining without me directly being involved on every layer of the company. We have sustainable brands that have really grown bigger than myself. That's super cool. I love that feeling.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Well, and I know you are definitely not one to ever come out and say, I've made it. And that's a huge testament to your humbleness. And I guess actually as I'm asking that, that does make sense. I mean, anyone that has started a business out of scratch, I think you always have that feeling of when you first started and the money was just not even, it wasn't even an option.
Right.
And and I guess my question was more so going along the lines of financially, you get to that point where even if you're not a numbers person, I feel like a lot of these owners, they know their numbers. I mean, I don't know anyone that just flat out doesn't know their numbers. And if you're properly taking distributions or whatever and reinvesting in yourself, there does come that numerical moment where you go, aha, I'm not screwed. But on the flip side, you're always going to have that guttural feeling of, I never want to go back to day one.
Oh, for sure.
If that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like,
So
yeah, I mean, certainly there's resources that are a little more consistent in 22 years. You can bank on your brands. You can bank on within 20%, you want to grow, 8 to 12% a year, or you want to buy a company to have accelerated growth. You do anticipate resources, but man, you just never know. Anything can happen. Anything has happened. We've seen some crazy stuff over the years. Yet I always want to make sure that we're positioned in a place of strength so that the company is healthy, personally we're healthy. It's an insurance policy just to make sure that if there's a brand that gets impacted or market gets impacted, that we can withstand. I'm not opposed to moving brands around or altering their brands or pivoting. I'm not opposed to that at all. Even right now in this current day, I'm reevaluating our position, our brands, and where we're going the next 5 years.
Sure. And before we get into that, because I am super curious about where you guys are thinking about the next 5 or 10 years, without giving away the secret sauce, of course. Once you got to that point again where the business started to really turn up, were you one of the entrepreneurs that kept? Obviously, you keep reinvesting into the business, but some of these entrepreneurs, they do it to the point where some of their friends look and go, you can live a little bit, versus you see some entrepreneurs where the second they can, they start taking distributions to build up their outside investment opportunity. And then that's kind of the insurance vehicle. Like, how did you go about managing that for people that are looking to become successful in the media business?
Yeah, I think for us is you have to be very careful on distributions because there's sales and there's cash. And I've always run our business with sales as a forecast, but it's not the reality. I need to know how much I have to make today cash flow wise. What's my net this week? What's my net this month? Because you can make a hype decision or a gut decision that you might deserve or might want certain, X, Y, Z, but man, the cash may not come in time. And so honestly, if you look at the path from a business professional, whether it comes to finances, it's always been a trickle, feed the baby, feed the baby, feed the baby. But if you look at where we are today, both business and professional, you might think, wow, we've got this media company that has a huge impact. We've got a personal, resources that are different than when we first got married. You might say, wow, you've arrived. Well, there's 22 years of constant development of feeding the baby and compounding time, talent, and resources Well, you're looking at 22 years of compounding effect. You do anything for 22 years of compounding, you will get results if you believe in the process. And that's what we have today.
Sure. And so you kind of answered the question a little bit. The big question on the theme of the show is obviously how have you and Michelle capitalized on your finances to the fullest? But it sounds like it's been more so really focusing on the reinvestment of the business versus the distribution and in dispersion of diversification. Say that 10 times
Yeah,
fast.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. My feeling is the business is our income production tool. We've got to make sure that is tight, dialed, and forecasted to do well. If we can allocate resources at a very conservative amount on a yearly basis and do our investing, and believe in ourselves in, capitalizing on our investments year after year, that's what we've done. We've never gone into this and just unloaded, big distributions. It's honestly, it's just it's compounding compounding time and talent and resources is exactly what this is, Chris. And then maybe someday, right? And then you look at maybe a someday, perhaps, is there a big windfall? I don't know, but I'm not planning on a big windfall. I'm planning on every day to be a small little blow in the air that is a compound every day. But yeah, maybe you look at me 20 years from now, you might think, wow, you arrived, you have X, Y, Z. Well, it didn't just happen. It was very intentional for 24 years, going into 24 more years. That's the plan for me.
Well, and also you've got kiddos too.
Exactly.
Right? Like they're not cheap. No. So absolutely. So knowing all that you know now, what advice would you give capitalizers out there that are looking to dive into the world of media and capitalize on their finances and success to the fullest?
Yeah, I mean, Chris, that's a really solid question because it's media or business for capitalizers. You need to capitalize on this asset that you're starting, building, or buying. You have to allocate and give it time and resources to feed that baby. Just like a regular human being, you have to feed it. You have to take care of it before it takes care. It takes 18 years before the human is even close to being self-sufficient. I would treat your business or your idea or your company the same way. Whether, look at your business. You just didn't arrive overnight with awesome clients. You had to feed it, right? It takes time to feed it.
Sure.
And for capitalizers that are wanting to create wealth, there is no get rich. Do not look at get rich quick. That is a very wrong mindset. This is a long-term play. But if you have the right people at the table, you take care of the right people, pay them with great resources for a long period of time, you will create wealth.
Amen to that. And so I have to ask you now, okay, what gets you fired up? What wakes Josh up in the morning? What are you working on right now that just gets you absolutely jacked? What products are you using to make that happen? Give me the dirty details.
All right. So I'll start with the business side, brother. So business, we just acquired a travel company. So it's called Northwest Travel. And it's all about a brand, it's a website, it's a magazine, we have events, it's 5 states, it's Canada. I am so passionate about the travel industry. Personally, I love travel. I've always wanted this product. It's been part of my strategy and business planning for the last 7 years. And so we just acquired that this last 6 months. That on a business level is what really, really gets me fired up. How can I fine-tune, tweak, and accelerate growth? That's my passion. The other part of the rest of the company is we're adjusting our brands, adjusting our brand statement, adjusting our audience connectivity. So I'm excited about that. Personally, I love exercise. I love the outdoors. So I love pickleball. Pickleball is so much fun, and I love playing golf. So get me in the outdoors, get me hiking, get me riding bikes, playing pickleball and golfing. Those are things that I look forward to the competition of those aspects. I also love the returns on just getting a good sweat on and having a fun time with my friends and family.
Sure. I don't know what is in the air, but the last couple of guests we have had on are fired up about pickleball. I think it's making a gargantuan comeback.
No.
I really don't know what the deal is, but I've got to do some research. I think pickleball, that could be the next investment I'm diving into. So Josh, where can capitalizers go to find you and Premier Media Group and continue to support you and your incredible brand?
Well, you can find all of our brands at all your typical searches, but the main company, premiermedia.net, is our landing page. It houses our brands, and then our brands have their own life, their own identities. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can also find me on Twitter under Lead and Follow. I love leadership, and so that area of my life, I love writing about it, talking about leadership. So you'll see more of my personal writing all around leadership and small business. And hopefully a book someday soon,
Absolutely.
Chris.
Dude, you've got to get on the author bandwagon, my man. And if you need help, you know who to call. I am here for you every day of the week and twice on Sundays. Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming on. We cannot wait to have you on again very, very soon. And to the capitalizers listening in, thank you as always for tuning into this episode of Capitalize Your Finances with Premier Media Group's founder, Josh Dunn. If you have any questions about today's episode and this fantastic guest that we had on today, you already know the drill. You can either give me an email at chris@capitalizeyourfinances.com, or you can give us a call at 253-214-3050. That's 253-214-3050. And I'd be more than happy to answer any of your amazing questions that you have in store. And lastly, if you have anyone in mind that you'd like to have on the show so they can enlighten you on how they have capitalized on their finances to the fullest, you know the drill. Hit me up, and I'm going to make it happen. As always, I'm your host, Christopher A. Paniotti, the Cap and Capitalize. And until next time, keep capitalizing.
Christopher Paniotti is a registered representative with and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor and member FINRA SIPC. The investment professionals are affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Capitalize Your Finances, a separate entity from LPL Financial. Josh Dunn is not affiliated with Capitalize Your Finances or LPL Financial.